advice on online interviews to get into assessment centres. Okay, so I'm actually going to answer the third question first. How do I craft myself to give perfect interview answers? Okay, so basically, in a lot of interviews, you're going to find that, like, I don't know, like 2/3 of the questions are the same questions, just repeated again and again in every single interview. So, for example, they're always going to ask you a question like, why do you want this role? Why do you want to work for this company? Like, what do you expect to be doing? What are the challenges you expect to face? That sort of thing. So that's the first thing to do there. That's your actual step. Set up a Notion document, set up um, like a Word document, notepad, something like that, and just have a think about all the common questions you can think of. And then basically write answers to those, or think about answers to those. Write a couple of bullet points, what the structure of your answer would be, and basically just get those drilled into your head, because that's the most important thing. First of all, is doing that so that you basically, when those common questions come up, you just know exactly what you're doing. You're like doing it on autopilot because you've done it so many times before. You can just do those answers which you've thought about, you've scripted, that sort of thing. So that's the first thing there, is to basically get those general questions like, why do you want this role? What do you expect to do in this role? What are the challenges you expect in this role? The second type of questions they ask in interviews are like star-based questions. What that means is situation, task, action, result, and it's basically, the question starts with, tell me about a time you did this, tell me about a time you did this, tell me about a time you did this. Basically, you need to make sure you have like 5, 6, 7 examples of scenarios when you did things. So these sort of tell me about a time questions can be, tell me about a time when you worked as a leader, tell me about a time when you worked as a team, tell me about a time when you showed integrity, tell me about a time when you came up with a creative solution, tell me about a time when you have to do something differently. Basically, you need to have a list of those scenarios ready to go. Okay, this was something that I learned before I did my assessment centres. Basically, they're going to ask you questions like this. Was basically a case of looking through my whole life, so extracurricular activities, like what did I do in school, work experience, things I'd had, like sports I'd done, musical instruments, that sort of thing. When has there been scenarios you've had to work as a team, you've had to be a leader, you've had to be all these sort of things? Basically need a list of those scenarios, because otherwise they're going to ask you a question like, tell me about a time you were a leader. If I'd done no preparation, they asked me the question, tell me about a time you were a leader, I would have been like scanning through my brain, but I couldn't really think of anything, because what I found is a lot of these things, like, they're not very obvious. Like, to you, they probably seem pretty normal. Like, I don't know, I played in a football team, right? So you probably in your brain that doesn't even seem like a big thing. Oh, everyone plays football. Do you know what I mean? Like, what's so special about playing in a football team, right? But that's the perfect example for telling about a time when you worked in a team. Or if you're like the captain of the football team, tell me a time when you were a leader. Okay, so that's why I find that it's a bit difficult thinking of these scenarios in the first place, because usually you're probably not even going to notice, and they're going to just seem obvious to you. Like, it's going to seem like everyday activity, like me just like playing a musical instrument. To me, like, I don't really think anything of it. I just like finish my tea, come up, do an hour of music practice, and continue with the rest of my life, right? Whereas in reality, that actually shows, like, tell me a time when you've worked really hard on something. Okay, so just have a think about it, get that list of scenarios. I'd actually have it in front of me during the interview. So you said it's an online interview. That means you can like have it like print off the page and put it on like the table in front of your laptop, or even better than that, you can like stick it on the webcam. So not stick it on the webcam, stick it on the wall behind the webcam. So the webcam's here. I basically used to stick like things up here. Like, I've still got the blue tack here of where I used to stick those things up. So I'd stick like my CV up there, or I'd stick some notes up there. So it basically means when you're answering these questions on the online interview, they ask you a question. In the second, while you take a second to think, just look up, okay, I'm going to go with this one. Because some of these scenarios, they're like interchangeable. Like, for example, working as a team could also be the same one as working as a leader, because like you're a leader in that team. So the example works for both. Or you have to come up with a creative solution as a leader in a team. So it could work for those 3 scenarios, if that makes sense. Like, the scenarios you're going to come up with, these star-based questions, are basically interchangeable. So those are basically the 2 types of interview answers which I'd basically focus on, like, crafting beforehand, basically. So those common ones, what the challenge is, all that sort of thing. Basically, have a think about those. Like, you can Google them as well if you want, like, common interview questions. But I think I've covered the main ones already in this video. Basically, just make sure you know what you're talking about. Star-based questions just have a bunch of scenarios of things you've done in your life, like working as a team and all that sort of thing. So you can then use those for those star-based questions. And then the third type is like scenario-based questions, sort of like, what would you do if you were at work and something happened, and what would you do? Those questions you can't really craft like beforehand to give a perfect interview answer. Those you just have to do, and that really comes down to interview skill. It is basically just, if you practice doing interviews, you're going to get better at that. So if the first time I'd ever done it, someone would give me a question like, so imagine you're at work and then like someone gives you 3 tasks that need to be done by the end of the day, what would you do? I wouldn't really know what to say, because it's like, oh, I'd just do the tasks. Like, how do you make that sound good? I think that sort of comes with practice. Like, you'll learn to say, okay, so first of all, when I got given these tasks, I would, like, first of all, read through the briefs, use my attention to detail skills to make sure that I knew exactly what was covered. Then I'd basically split the day into like different sections where I'd focus on this task and I'd focus on this task, basically split up my day so I could manage my time. And then before I finished, I would make sure like to allocate time so I could check my work to ensure there was high quality on time or something. That's something I basically learned through practice, and these scenario-based questions, you're not going to be able to learn in advance. You're not going to be able to craft them to give the perfect answer. You have to basically just, you have to get practice. So basically, if you have an opportunity to get practice on a mock interview, then I definitely recommend it, because that's basically how you can get this third type. Let me write these down here actually. So general, scripts, star, list your scenarios, and scenario. I mean, that's a bit confusing. List your, what should I say? List your examples. So, and scenario-based questions, just practice, like practice interviews. That's what I'd say there. Do's and don'ts of doing an online interview. I think Elvin has covered it here. Just literally stare into the webcam. Like when I'm filming my videos, I try and look in the webcam as much as possible. I end up like just, just staring at myself in the camera. But like ideally, you want to look at this webcam as much as possible, because it really is much more engaging when you're like giving your answer about why you want this job, and you're looking like right into their soul, as opposed to just like looking at yourself down the camera or looking at the screen. Like basically, just look at that webcam as much as possible. Yeah, make it obvious you're using star. I mean, you don't have to like say, so this is the situation, and then do this, and then say like, so this was a situation, I was working in a team, and then you don't have to like explicitly say the task was we had to complete an expedition. Action, I decided to collaborate with the team. Result, we completed. Like, you don't have to be like obvious like that. But basically saying, just for this example, make sure you follow the structure of situation, task, action, result. Basically explain that example, like what it was, what you're supposed to do, what you did, and basically the result one's important, like showing that it was a good result, which shows this like skill you have, or like this scenario, it was good, it reflects positive on you. You don't want to like give an example of when you work as a team, and you give an example of like, oh, you did all these like collaborative things and included everyone and asked everyone questions, and in the end you ended up like failing or losing. It's like, okay, well, your skills weren't that good then, right? So just remember that: situation, task, action, result. Do's and don'ts. So do look at the webcam. Do basically be prepared for notes. I mentioned this a moment ago. The advantage of an online interview is you can have a load of notes in front of you. So the do's, I would say, is basically have like every copy of every part of your application. So whether you submit a CV, a cover letter, application questions, whether you made like research notes, have it all in front of you. That's the benefit of an online interview. You can have it all on the desk. As I said, have it behind the webcam here. It basically means when you get asked a question, think about your answer. This is another tip. This is what you should do. Don't rush into answers. I see people, because I've been giving lots of mock interviews myself, I see people, like, I give them a slightly weird question, like a question they haven't heard before, and literally they pause 1 second and go straight into it, and they don't really know what they're talking about. They lose the train of thought, and it ends up being a not very good answer. You can basically just pause and then give your answer, like pause to think about it, properly think about your structure. It means you know where you're going. You're not going to suddenly freeze in the middle or any of that sort of thing. You know what's going on. So that's what I'd say there. Make sure when you're doing this, you're pausing beforehand. I've actually done a full YouTube video as well on this. What's it called? I've no idea what it's called. Let me find it. Okay, it's called "How Long Should I Take per Answering an Interview Question?" I'd recommend you watch that, and that will basically give you more specific advice on like how long you should wait, rather than just like going straight into it. With 2 seconds, just you can take like 10, 15 seconds to just pause and then answer that question. If I come back here, don'ts. Yeah, so don't go straight into answer without thinking about it. And also don't, if you mess up, start worrying about it, because then you're going to basically mess up the rest of your interview. Like if you mess up a question, just read back into it, just forget about it instantly and just continue with the rest of the interview. I've like had interviews where I like fully mess up a question. I can't even think of anything to say. I just be professional about it. Just say, sorry, can't think of anything, or sorry, can we move on to the next question? Then move on to the next question, completely forget about it, reset your brain, get ready to do the next question. If you keep worrying about it in your head, thinking, oh, I've lost this job, then you're not going to be able to perform as well for the rest of the interview, and then it's not really going to work, is it? Okay. So that's what I'd say for don'ts. Yeah, so in general, I've given you lots of advice here in this 10-minute video. On top of this, in my Assessment Centre full course, which is available on the School and Apprenticeship Insider program, there's this full lecture which I basically go through a lot of what I've said, and some other things as well, basically in more detail. So if you've got time, you can watch that, whack it on like 1.5 speed or something. I know it's a long video, but that's like one of the most useful videos I've made. Hope this helps you, and good luck with your interview, and I hope this helps anyone else who is watching this video and gives you some tips on those online interviews.